Bernstein.
Disco Ray.
Chicago Sports Radio 670. The Score.
And Boers and Bernstein also brought to you by Northwestern Basketball, Chicago's Big Ten team. The Wildcats' home opener is Sunday, November 13th at 6 p.m. inside Welsh Run Arena. Visit NUSports.com or call 888-GO-PURPLE to buy your single-game mini plan or season tickets today.
My grandmother was in attendance when Babe Ruth pointed to the bleachers, and she watched it.
And now Babe Ruth is pointing out towards center field, and he's yelling at the Cubs that the next pitch over is going out in the center field. Now he's looking toward the stand. And here's the pitch to count as ball 2 and strike 2. It's coming. Babe Ruth connects, and there it goes. The ball is going high into the center field stand, into the scoreboard, and it's a home run.
It is indeed time for Friday Fung.
Fung is winning. Winning is fun.
Yeah, we know, Ozzy. Thank you.
It also is brought to you by Sport Clips. Visit sportclips.com for a location near you. Thank you for that. And it's very simple.
Let's read a couple of these, and this is what we're doing here. And this one was actually sent in by the Score's very own Jay Zawoski.
Long-time hockey guy.
He said this, and he says, my grandpa played piano in a jazz band when he was in his 20s. The band was very good, but they lacked the appeal of a frontman, so they held auditions. And one guy who tried out was this small, portly guy, and he told him that all he was missing was a great band. He had a beautiful and unique voice, but he was such a dork that they didn't want him in the band. That dorky fat man was the Velvet Fog, Mel Torme. Until the day he died, my grandfather would get angry whenever a Mel Torme song came out or his name was mentioned. They rejected Mel Torme as the frontman and lead singer for their band. Nice scouting there.
Very nice, Jay.
Well, if you reject guys for being dorks, that's why the police almost didn't get formed because of Stuart Copeland. They realized Sting just hated him from the moment they started, never stopped. Blind Chauffeur is on the Score.
Hello, boys.
Hello, Blind Chauffeur.
About 25 years ago or so, my grandfather had put together a family tree that included photos that my family collected over the years. And in one photo, I saw a picture of 4 men at a card table. One of them was my grandfather as a young man at around 25. Another one was my great-uncle, and another was my great-grandfather. The 4th man I had seen before in history books in middle school, but I couldn't remember what his name was. I asked my grandfather who the 4th guy was in the photo, and he said he was a boyhood friend and frequent bridge partner of my great-grandfather. That man was Winston Churchill.
Whoa. Wait, what's that look?
Okay.
It's possible.
Possible, yeah.
It's possible.
Thank you, Blind Chauffeur.
Blue Man says, my dad was a waiter at a Randolph Street restaurant in the 1930s, and a customer left him a $1 tip, which is like a $100 tip now. My father asked his boss who that big spender was. Turned out the customer was Machine Gun Jack McGurn, who later planned the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Well, there's our Machine Gun Jack McGurn reference.
And Winston Churchill. I mean, that's coming out of the gate quick.
Here's Jim on the Score. Hello, Jim.
Hey, guys, that's tough to compete with. My son is an outfielder at UIC, and they went out to practice a couple weeks ago, and they were loosening up, and Granderson showed up. And so, 4 of the outfielders got a chance to long toss with him for about 5 or 6 minutes. And, Terry, I guess you'd call it they were comparing hoses.
As far as arm strength, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This from Matt.
I get a little worried when I hear that. It reminds me of my days in the sub.
Or with Milton Berle and Forrest Tucker.
Oh yeah, that definitely happened.
It says, in the early 80s, my mother's cousin was planning a golf trip to California with 3 other friends. And when he arrived at the resort, he found out the other 3 guys were snowed in. They were unable to make it. And the trip was paid for. So he decided to stay the weekend and play anyway, and he told his story to the golf pro on staff, who subsequently asked if he'd like to be paired with another group of golfers that was missing their 4th. And rather than golf alone, he agreed. As it turned out, the threesome was 3 former New York Jets, including Joe Namath. And this is my favorite part of this. My mother's cousin ended up becoming great friends with Broadway Joe, and he stood up with him as his best man at his wedding.
Oh, boy.
That had to be quite a wedding.
Yeah. Hold him up, baby.
At least somebody stood up.
Somebody hold him up.
John in
Joe.
Downers Grove, you're on Friday Fung on the Score, Relative Greatness.
What's up, fellas? My story's kind of retarded compared to all the rest of them so far.
That's okay.
I got two of them quick ones, though. My Uncle Bobby played high school football with Tit Butkus. He said he was a second-string offensive lineman, and Butkus used to beat the hell out of all the kids. He said he was just mean and just a plain ass. The other quick one I got, my wife was a restaurant manager in Willowbrook to a restaurant called Juicio's that opened up. The third week it opened up, this nice lady came in with her two kids. She started a conversation with my wife. Everything went great. 2 weeks later, she came in with her husband, Jim Tomei. And while he was sitting there, it was right when they started talking about him going to Minnesota. He was sitting there at the table reading the article about him going to Minnesota. She told him about me being a Sox fan. He signed it, brought it home.
Did it or a sweater.
I was going to say that. Then he went over and redid the ceiling of their
That's what he did,
the house.
Too. That guy.
He painted everything for them.
Is something.
I know. Tom in Dubuque, our old buddy on the Score. Hey,
Hello,
Tom.
boys.
Hello.
Terry, I'm disappointed. All this talk the last couple of weeks, all this Boston Red Sox talk, not once have you brought up our guy, Teddy Chin Nuts. So,
I thought that.
so back in the day, my aunt, when she was about a junior or senior in high school, she tutored this fellow classmate. He'd always come over to their house and stuff. And my aunt is too nice to say anything negative about anybody. She always told us that he just needed academic help. But if you asked my dad, he always said he was just a total dumbass. And he ended up, what I believe is kicking the first field goal in Super Bowl history. It was Chiefs place kicker Mike Mercer.
That's what I love about this segment. If you actually handicapped it, if a Score listener right now, before the segment started,
wow,
tried to write down the names, I wonder how many you'd actually be able to check off your list, because nobody would have had Mike Mercer.
I think Winston Churchill would have been pretty safe, too.
This from Mike's neighbor in Milwaukee, who says, my dad, a long-retired suburban dentist, had as a patient at one time the actor Gary Cole and Ted Nugent's mom. So not exactly a brush with greatness, literally brushing greatness and flossing them too. Northwest Side Pete, relative greatness on the Score.
Oh.
Hey guys, when my grandma was a little girl, she grew up on the south side, and her dad was the head engineer for a theater down there, and he used to bring Bob Hope home all the time. And him and Bob Hope would drink whiskey all night, and then my great-grandma would have to cook dinner so Bob could be sober enough to go on stage and perform the next day.
That you did know Bob Hope.
Yeah, I think
you pretty much got it.
That is the ring of truth.
That I'm buying. Yes, indeedy.
Thank you, Pete.
That's one of those. That's absolutely true.
Kyle says, my aunt was a long-time casting director in Hollywood, and in 1984, she was the lead casting director for the movie Breakin'. During the casting process, she needed to find extras for the opening beach scene that featured Break Street, the famous breakdance group. And there was a later-to-be star born in that scene. It was an extra wearing the all-black spandex outfit, was none other than the man with the heart of a lion, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The muscles from Brussels.
Yep.
Dumber than lots of stones. Dumbass.
Was he being tutored at Tom and Dubuque's house, too?
I think he was. Yeah, I'm
Jean-Claude
sure.
in there. Elmhurst and Chris on the Score.
Hey, guys. When I was growing up, my father would tell me about stories from World War II. He was a World War II veteran. And he didn't talk a whole lot about it, but a little bit. And he told me that he was served in a platoon with some baseball players at the time. I never quite believed him or really thought it was anybody. And then I came across pictures later after he died, and I looked at them, and on the back it had my father's name and a few other guys and Warren Spahn.
Whoa! Wang time! Wang Chung! Oh, man. Get him in your platoon. You ain't got room for yourself. Oh, Warren. Warren.
Max says in Super Bowl for Super Bowl 20, my parents were invited by the chairman of the Super Bowl committee to be a host of one of the prior MVPs, and they were assigned to host Roger Staubach for the weekend. Many great stories arose for the weekend, but the best was a night on Bourbon Street. My parents were at a table with Roger Staubach, Lynn Swann, and they noticed a presence enter the room, and down the stairs came Red Buttons. And this, I love how he phrased this. Red Buttons accompanied by Frank Sinatra. Dude, I think you got that backwards. Apparently, Red and Lynn Swann were buddies. Did you know that? Red Buttons and Lynn Swann were buddies?
No.
Said Lynn called them to the table. So my mother, not ever impressed by anyone, was rendered speechless by Frank. And being a redhead and wearing a large hat, Frank noticed her, went over to her, put his hand on top of hers and said, "Hey, Red, nice lid."
Yeah, that's and I'm lucky that's all he said.
Well,
I mean, he would. Okay, well, even Dad was sitting there. He didn't care. It didn't matter to him. He's Frank damn Sinatra.
Well, wouldn't you?
Yes, 100%. We'll talk about our lid.
On the northwest side, here's Frank, appropriately on the score. Hi, Frank.
Hey, guys, I got a Bubba Smith story to add on to yesterday's.
Okay.
My uncle's at Michigan State, same time as Bubba Smith, and my uncle plays football a little bit. So he's a center on the football team. But the problem is he's third string. So he's facing Bubba Smith in practice every day. Well, he gets tired of it, so he decides that he wants to concentrate on school and quits the team. But later in the season, the first two string centers get hurt or somehow can't play. So the coach comes back to him and says, "Hey, we need you. My uncle says, "No, all right, I'm just not interested." Michigan State that year goes on to the Rose Bowl, and he missed out on a chance not only to play with Bubba Smith, but to go to the Rose Bowl.
Well, maybe he would have sucked and cost him the Rose Bowl, too. Bubba Smith, boy, that's not a good death. There's really not good death anywhere, I guess, but that one's not good.
Time Traveling Bunny says, my
good.
dad and I were watching the 2010 World Series, and my mom entered the room when Buster Posey was at the plate. My mom commented on the name Buster, and it led to a conversation about old folksy nicknames, and I wasn't really paying attention. But my mom told me my uncle had been nicknamed Butchie Boy. That's kind of weird, right? Wait, what's a Butchie Boy? I'm only a young college lad. I'd never seen the Bozo Show, or the Bozo cartoon in which Butchie Boy was the name of his young and possibly gay ward, the Robin to Bozo's Batman, if you will.
No possibly to it.
Says, my mom explained all of this to me, including the fact that my grandmother worked for a time with Bozo's wife, and that my grandparents had partied with the whole clown family on many occasions. Most of this was really boring to me, but what came next changed my life forever. In one of my now-deceased grandmother's many drunken confessions, she admitted to my mom that she slept with Bob Bell.
Ka-ching! Well, that's what we're looking for. Now we're talking about something. I hope he had the whole thing on.
Well, you would ask for that, right?
Oh, the big shoes and everything, absolutely.
Found bucket number 7.
Pound me, dress for me.
Jim in Bloomingdale, you're on WSCR.
Guys, how you doing?
Great.
About 15 years ago, I'm a teacher, and I was working, and we had a nice substitute teacher, a lady, much older than me, probably about 60 years old, and we're talking at lunch, and we're talking about movies. So I told her, I'm like, one of my favorite movies ever is The Abyss. And then she's like, "Oh, why do you like that?" I'm like, because that lady in that movie is just beautiful. She's like really pretty. She's got great hair. And then she's like, Mary Stuart Master Antonio. And I'm like, yes, I think she's great. She's like, "It's my daughter." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And then she's like, "Yes, that is." So the next day, when she came to work, she brought the family photo album, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed." But that was her daughter, so that was pretty cool.
Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio. And if I remember correctly, you get to see her topless in that movie, right?
I think so.
As they were like preparing her for the special suit or something.
Special suit.
Or whatever they said they were doing.
Preparing her for Bozo.
Hey, lady, Bozo's coming.
Bozo was on every set, stooping the starlet. Ka-ching. Bozo's
right.
here.
More relative greatness in a moment. Don't go anywhere because it's good. You got the score.
Fung is winning. Winning is Fung.
And we are in the midst of a stirring rendition of Friday Fung. Relative greatness, been fun so far, and I can't imagine it stopping. I just don't foresee that at all.
You don't?
Nope.
All right. Well, he was in the room, but I don't know where he is.
I know. He's looking at the what?
Mr. Mouth is on the score. Mouth?
Birthday of Loretta Swift, who once played a pushy saloon heiress in a single episode of the greatest TV show ever, Bonanza. Anyway, but seriously, gentlemen, it will not surprise you to learn that I'm the black sheep of my family due to the fact that I've gone into nuclear physics instead of the family business, tavern ownership. My father will occasionally regale us with fond stories of his days working in a seedy establishment on North Mannheim near O'Hare, where entertainment personalities would stop on their way out of town. His favorite repeat patrons were two literally and figuratively magnanimous men, Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. In fact, the best story about the Hulkster goes that he once was so nice as to help eject a patron who was passing counterfeit 20s, which he called Monopoly money. My old man also managed a prototype version of the band Survivor. But other than that, and the Kyle Farnsworth stories that every bar owner has, and the time I briefly met Stephen Hawking, that's about as close as I've ever come to relative greatness.
All right, now get back in here and have unemployed lawyers spill beer in your crotch.
Goofy bastard, really. I mean, GB. Goofy bastard.
This is Redneck Lawyer says, my great-great-grandfather's brother-in-law started a beer brewing company. My great-great-grandfather at the time was a cooper. Granddad's brother-in-law tried to get him to work for the brewer, but my granddad decided the future was in cooping and not brewing, and he moved from St. Louis to Peoria to make his fortune. And no one in my granddad's family tree has ever had more than 2 nickels to rub together ever since. I've always hated the Cardinals, and now I know why. Got to do a little work there to figure out who that brewer was, but I think he would probably result in a bicracky.
Yep. Augie Bush.
Lou in Morton Grove, you're on the score.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Good.
Love your show.
Love your suit.
About 20 years ago, my mom came to visit, and we went up to Chicago she offered to take me out to lunch, and we chose Ed the Bevics. As we're sitting there ordering our food, my mom looks across the room and sees a guy she thinks she knows and says to me, I think that's Richard Dreyfuss. And I said, well, I don't know for sure. Our waiter came, and she said to our waiter, is that Richard Dreyfuss sitting over there? And the waiter goes, I'm not sure. I'll check. And then he proceeds to turn and holler across the room as loud as he can, hey, are you Richard Dreyfuss? The gentleman turned, and with a scowl upon his face, you could tell immediately it was Richard Dreyfuss. And the waiter looks at my mom and goes, yep, I'm pretty sure that's him.
That's sort of like what the Frugal Gourmet said to me when I saw him on a plane. Thank you for being so subtle. He did not try to touch me.
That's lucky it's all.
I said, oh, my God, you're the Frugal Gourmet.
Calling Mr. Dover.
He says, well, his little buddy Ben was with him. This from Elizabeth, who says, my husband is in the optical business, and 20 years ago he was calling on a doctor in Grand Rapids before the doctor left to play golf. And while he's in the waiting room, a man who was clearly his golf partner came into the room carrying a golf club, nodded, and sat down to wait. My husband noted all the pictures on the wall of President Ford and noticed the golf partner's resemblance to the president when he realized that it was Gerald Ford. Whose half-brother was a Grand Rapids optometrist. The best part was the first thing my husband said to the former president, didn't you used to play football at Michigan? Tony is in his truck, and he's on the score. Hey, Tony.
How's it going, guys?
Good, Tony.
My story is actually a funny family story. My family, born and raised in Mississippi. My aunt, when she was in college, there was a young man that actually was very, very fond of her. He would do as much as to go to my grandmother's house to ask my grandmother if he could date her, and she always said no because she never deemed this young man fit to be good enough for my aunt. Well, unfortunately, my aunt never got married, and this young man turned out to be the greatest wide receiver of all time, and his name was definitely Jerry Rice.
One from Chris here, who says, my wife's late grandfather served as a captain in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II and was the bombardier on over 30 flights over Germany. He earned the Distinguished Flying Cross and multiple other medals. The pilot on some of these 30 flights for which he was the bombardier, Jimmy Stewart.
Ah.
I didn't know Jimmy Stewart was a bomber
Yeah,
pilot.
he was a bomber pilot.
Really? I didn't know that. Dave in Oswego is on the score. Friday Fung, relative greatness.
Dave?
Yeah, sorry. How's it going, guys?
Good, Dave.
All right, my brother, when he was in the Air Force Academy in the 70s, was a pretty good athlete and played basketball. And he's playing a pickup game. Then walks a couple guys, one of which is, and they have the next game, one of which is a pretty big guy. And my brother's 6'5", and he says, "I'll take that guy. He looks like he's kind of, he's not really quick and not fast. And the guy's taller than him, but he think he could stay with him." Well, after a little bit, he realized that he was very good and very athletic because he was guarding Dan Issel.
See, that also sort of crosses over to another segment that we do called Live Ringers,
Yep.
right? That's where you're involved in a sporting event and somebody sneaks in, somebody who's a little better than everybody else.
Yeah, Dan Issel, a lot of points. I remember, lot of points.
And not a lot of teeth.
And from, and from Batavia.
John in Indiana says many years ago, 1996, after Glenn Robinson was drafted by the Bucks, Purdue University hosted an exhibition game between the Bucks and the Pacers at Mackey Arena. I don't remember much of the game, but I remember when I was 14 and I was with my 10-year-old cousin Carrie. And we're very happy that all the current Purdue players and NBA players were so close and available. And after the game was over, kids were allowed to line up outside the arena to get things autographed. I had a mini Pacers ball. My cousin had a Bucks hat. And they lined up bicycle racks from the outer locker room door to the players' buses as a makeshift barrier between the players and fans. And the players started coming out. We got a few autographs. Standing there in awe, Rick Smits came lumbering out of the door, and having never seen a 7-footer before, we're staring as he approached us. And about the moment he got to us, somebody shouted his name, and he turned to look who it was. And he didn't see the angle of the bicycle rack, and he tripped over the line of bicycle racks and fell directly on top of my 10-year-old cousin. I honestly saw my cousin completely disappear, and I thought he was dead. And Smits got up, swearing in Dutch, and he apologized to Carrie, and then he pulled out his game jersey, and he signed it, and he gave it to my cousin. He said, "I don't have any idea what happened to the jersey, but whenever I see the Pacers logo, I imagine Rick Smits on top of my cousin."
Well, so do I now.
Now we all will.
Thank you for that.
This is Dave on the score. Hey, Dave.
Hi, guys. Great show.
You sound like you're not sure.
Hey, is that a question?
No. My father was a pilot for a certain airline back in '63, and they got real rowdy, intoxicated, and of all people, my father grabbed Mike Ditka to go down the aisle. Told everyone to be quiet and leave the stewardesses alone. And Joe Fortunato said, "Okay, shut up, greaseball. We're going to do it."
Dave, I think it's time to go back to the home.
We're
good.
Thank you,
Dave.
Dave.
Thank you.
I have no idea who was drunk and who was being talked to.
I neither, but it's.
I thought he said his father was a pilot. The pilot was
he
drunk.
was drunk.
Right.
I mean, well, let's. I thought maybe Ditka flew the plane.
No, apparently the plane was full of the Chicago Bears.
Oh.
And I guess the Bears were intoxicated, messing around with the flight attendants.
So Ditka was yelling at Fortunato.
Right, and the pilot asked Ditka to get the guys all in order.
Like Ditka wasn't drunk?
Apparently maybe he was the least. I don't know.
No way.
No way.
Not possible. Want to do a couple more after an update? Yeah.
I'd love to.
Okay, good.
We have Zach at 440.
Let's take a few more calls, some stories of relative greatness here on Friday Fun, because this has really been good.
Yep, fun.
Jay in Milwaukee, you're on the score.
Hi, my godfather, my dad's best friend from college, was a limo driver after graduating downtown and working at the O'Hare, and he was picking up somebody at the airport, and they ended up not coming and showing up, and somebody else there had not had the limo driver show up. Well, it turns out being this man who was waiting was Michael Jordan, just getting in after being drafted by the Bulls, and from then on he ends up being his personal assistant and best friend, Jordan.
I know that guy.
I do too.
He was always with him.
Yep, George. All right, well, I'm going to get back to Bob Bell stooping somebody. Can we get back to that?
Wicker Park Mac says, my mom's cousin was at Woodstock. And before the show, he was near a stage, and he saw several people struggling with the sound equipment. Knowing a thing or two about AV, my mom's cousin offered his help, and they gladly welcomed it. They explained their sound guy had quit minutes before the show. And after fixing the issues, the stage manager asked if he'd stick around, and they said, don't worry, they'd pay him for his time. He agreed. The performer for that show was Jimi Hendrix. And this launched his career as a sound guy. He ended up becoming a stage manager and has worked with NSYNC, Bob Seger, and several other large tours. That was kind of an important show,
Yeah,
right?
kind of, yeah. The Jimi Hendrix thing was kind of important.
The Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock was
kind of important.
Kind of a big deal.
I'm still mad that I didn't do it.
John and Mattoon, what? Play the guitar
No,
left-handed?
go to Woodstock.
Oh, okay. John, you're on the score.
Yeah, about when I was 3 or 4, about 40-some years ago, my mom took me and my brothers over to the Bozo show.
Uh-oh.
And when they went to, I know.
It's a start.
And then when they went on to cartoons, I was kind of distraught because I was looking for the cartoon people. I didn't know it was on a monitor. I thought there was actually, animated people running around. So when we're
I would have left you there then.
But we're sitting at the end. Afterwards, we were sitting at the end, and one of the ladies said, "Well, you want to tour the show to see how this really works?" So we're going around the hall, and we go around the corner, and bam, my mom just totally runs into Ray Rayner. Ray's all apologetic because he really bopped her in the head, and my mom said, "Oh no, sir, thank you very much. That was my pleasure." And she felt all embarrassed and walked away.
My guy! I loved Ray Rayner.
Didn't give her a little, huh?
Well, Ray, I don't know. All right, one more.
One more. We got Zach coming up.
This is the last one. Segment's been great so far, so we'll close it out with Andrew, who claims to be in or on a tractor.
Wow.
I really am in a tractor. This summer, my dad was judging a cow show down in Whiteside County, which is Morrison, down below Galena. And he noticed a bunch of large men walking around with bomb-sniffing dogs. 5 minutes later, the president of the United States shows up, and my dad talked to him one-on-one for 5 minutes while he's judging the show. The thing that irks my aunt is that she's a Democrat, had to wait 2 hours to hear a speech, and sit outside on a black metal chair, and my Republican dad talked to him one-on-one.
Did he like him?
He's a good enough guy, he said, but...
They took away his freedoms.
Yeah, he's not Rick Perry, but then who is?
He wasn't as drunk.
He said, "You didn't see that?"
I haven't seen the alleged Rick Perry drunk speech.
Oh God!
It's supposed to be really quite something.
It is something.
That they had to call press conferences immediately after to insist he wasn't drunk.
He wasn't drunk. See, that's a bad career.
Was it like Ditka at the White House?
Pretty bad.
Really?
He was giddy. He was creepy is what he is. All right. Zach Zaidman, outstanding job.
Great.
Kids. Very, very good. Zach Zaidman is coming up. He'll have a look at the Bears and Eagles right here, Chicago Sports Radio 670 Score. And this football report is brought to you by GoGo, the internet in the sky. Visit GoGoAir.com/Chicago for your chance to win a free in-flight internet flight pass. Zach Zaidman joins us. Hello, Zach.
Hey, guys. It's my last chance to talk to you before we head out to Philadelphia, and I use the editorial "we" on Sunday.
You always do.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we talk some hardcore football here because
That's what I'm looking for.
That's what we want.
It's important to understand what the Bears need to do in order to stop Philadelphia. And yesterday we talked about how Lovie Smith publicly called out Henry Melton. He's expecting more from the under-tackle position, what the Bears call the 3 technique. And Anthony Adams today explained why that position is the engine that makes the Bears defense go.
You know, guys like John Randall and Warren Sapp, if they make, those inside rushes, it just creates so much, for everybody else, for the nose, for the end, for the linebackers to clean everything up. Say if you got a draw and that 3 technique, read it as a pass and get off the rock and just take that inside rush, it just free up everything.
I mean, you heard what Lovie said yesterday, and it's not just yesterday. It's about he said that they need more from Henry. Back in the day, he always used to get on Tommy when he felt that he wasn't getting enough. I mean, there's some high expectations for that position.
Well, this is one of the perfect games to get on somebody. You know what I mean? Everybody gonna be watching Monday night. It's a big game, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna. Answer the bell, man. I mean, he's a good player. He's fast. He's quick. Got all the tools. Got Coach Marinelli coaching him, so he'll be fine, man. He'll be fine. He'll shine.
But if he doesn't shine, guys, I found it interesting today that Rod Marinelli was asked what he expects from that position. And remember, a coach always gives you a legitimate answer when it comes, especially like Marinelli, when it comes to his defensive line. Listen to what he had to say. There's a lot of football ease in this answer, but listen at the end when he discusses what he expects out of Henry Melton.
To me, sometimes it won't show up. You'll see it on it, but we have a factor grade, the measurable contribution per play. That sometimes it's disrupting blockers. A guy pulls, he eats up two. That type of disruption. Now they're really accounting for him a little bit more. If he's getting a single, you got to come home. Now you have to. He's got some very good rushes in there, but the deal is, we got to close the deal. Player and coach, we got to close that deal together. And there's a lot on the plate for that position, but for both of them, and the competition is fierce between them too.
The competition being between Henry Melton and Amobi Okoye. And clearly, if Melton doesn't impress the coaching staff the way they would like, I think you're going to see some more reps for a guy like Okoye. And the other name that we should mention, depending on his health, is going to be Matt Tuina, who can play the 3 technique. He's been primarily used this season before he got banged up as the nose tackle, the position where Stephen Paya has begun to emerge a little bit, and Anthony Adams now healthy playing that position as well. But clearly they're trying to put the pressure to Henry Melton to play a little bit better, I think because they believe that he's probably the most talented out of the group, but hasn't played that way since the Atlanta game.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, just what it says about what they really think of Henry Melton. I guess it says that he's worth doing this for.
Yes. And they used to do it to Tommy Harris, too, if you remember. I mean, Tommy Harris used to get the treatment even when it seemed as though he didn't have the physical tools anymore to be the kind of dominant player he was. I think they did it around this time last year. I think the Bears played the Eagles right around Thanksgiving. And if you remember, Tommy Harris had a whale of a game against the Eagles. He had 2 tackles, had a quarterback pressure, had the pass breakup, the kind of disruption that you heard Marinelli talk about. And to me, at the time, we thought, man, you know what, maybe Tommy Harris does have a little something left in the tank, but it was not meant to be. But in that game, he definitely was a factor, and that's the kind of performance you need, I think, in order to make sure that Michael Vick stays in the pocket and he gets rid of the ball before he wants to, and he's not comfortable back there. I think that's a big thing for the Bears in this game, especially when you consider they're on the road and there are a lot of other factors you have to deal with as well.
I'll say this for Henry Melton, because as you point out, Zach, Lovey doesn't do this very often where he calls out somebody. He took it pretty damn well, Henry Melton. I mean, I don't think he has a choice, any other choice.
Right, exactly.
He took it pretty damn well. I'll say that for him. And I don't know. I know against Atlanta you were playing against 2 guys who were at least second stringers to my knowledge. And really, it's, you thought maybe that was a little coming out party for him, but I have to admit he's been hard to find lately.
Yeah, and keep in mind that there's a different kind of philosophy that the Eagles are using from an offensive line standpoint. Remember, they have that new offensive line coach, Howard Mudd. You might have seen him in that Sunday night game. He was on crutches, had the crazy hair. He comes over from Indianapolis. So,
yes.
They block a little bit differently, and they want to take advantage of that. I think the Bears see an opportunity here where if they get that interior presence, they can really do some damage against Michael Vick and this offense. Not going to be easy, obviously, but that's where it starts for him.
What did they see offensively? What are the Bears looking at? I mean, you know what the Eagles are going to do, at least some of what they're going to do. What do they see offensively? I get the defensive part. I get what the Bears have to do. How about offensively?
I think what the Bears are going to try to do offensively is make sure that there's a heavy dose of the run, or at least a commitment to the run, so you draw that extra man into the box. And then it's usually a receiver's dream to have one-on-one coverage with a cornerback. Now, you're talking about they've got 3 of the best corners in the league. So the key is, though, and Roy Williams talked about this, Mike Martz talked about it, the one advantage that the Bears may have at the receiver position is they've got the elite speed in both Devin Hester and Johnny Knox. And you don't have Asamoah is not the kind of guy. The Packers, we always talk about winning those one-on-one matchups as receivers, but they do such a great job of jamming at the line. The Eagles, not so much. They just rely on their ability to cover as corners. Well, you know what? This is the kind of dream matchup. You're going to have your speed as a receiver against their ability to cover. You got to take advantage of that, and it involves getting protection up front for Jay Cutler, him being accurate with his throws, and then those receivers have to go out and make a play. But I think it's that speed that the Bears are going to try to utilize, and then hopefully for them, everything else it kind of lines up, the protection and the quarterback.
It's something I should have probably asked Matt Bowen about, but if Michael Vick as a left-handed quarterback is going to, if they want to flush him to his right, to make him try to set and throw across his body, which he doesn't want to do, traditionally, the open side of the formation is going to be on Vick's left. So wouldn't that nickel blitz of DJ Moore on the open side of the formation be particularly effective in trying to flush him in the direction he doesn't want to go?
Yes, absolutely.
Because they like that. They like Moore as a blitzer.
He's good at it, actually.
Pound for pound,
he's their best blitzer.
He might be the best blitzer on the team.
No, he is their best blitzer because he gets into the backfield probably more often than all of the other guys. You know, you see the linebackers try and do it, but they don't have as much success as DJ Moore getting there. He's going to be a big part of what they try to do against Michael Vick. The key is you want to make Michael Vick move laterally and not up and down the field. If they can make him move laterally, it increases your chances. Ideally, they'd like to. And Rod Marinelli always talks about rushing in tandem as a defensive line to make sure that everyone understands how to keep the quarterback where they want him to stay, especially in the pocket. Because if you force Michael Vick to be a pocket passer, generally the defensive lineman a lot bigger than Vick, then you can throw your hands up there, deflect a few passes. He's not comfortable. He likes to move, and he's one of those. Aaron Rodgers is the same way, where they're lethal in their ability to throw on the move. And that's something that the Bears don't want, because then it forces the back end of your defense to cover. And, I don't think that's the ideal situation for the way the Bears are designed defensively.
No, and Vic, again, as we let you go, Zach, I don't think the history of the Bears being able, because Vic's numbers last year against the Bears certainly weren't bad. And, I mean, it's certainly a concern, all of it. And the other thing that worries any Bears fan that's been watching, the safeties. We talked about this the other day. I don't know if either one of them are certainly any good, and there's
going to be chances in front of Chris Conte because he's going to
21 yards down the field.
Yeah, but that's why they want the athletes back there, because, again, his job isn't to worry about necessarily stopping the run. They don't want him biting on the play action, because the goal is, if everyone screws up their job, and it's up to Chris Conte as the last line of defense to make that tackle on a running play, all they're hoping for at that point is that you just prevent the guy from scoring and give the defense another opportunity to make something happen. But if you bite on a fake, and all of a sudden there's someone behind you to catch a big pass like we saw often during the first 5 games of the season, that's when you're in trouble. By the way, in answer, I do have I was loading this up here while you guys were talking, Anthony Adams about how the defensive line is going to try and work in unison to stop Vick. Take a listen to this.
A lot of times, if you just read your keys and do whatever Coach Marinelli is telling you to do, you might not have, a bunch of tackle for losses. You might not have like a bunch of sacks, but you are penetrating and you are creating for others around you. And that's to me, that's having a good game. Stuff that don't show up in the stat sheets.
Being disruptive.
Right. Just being in the backfield, knocking off guys, hitting pullers and stuff like that. That's stuff that don't show up in the stat sheet, but just good, hard-nosed, good football play. That's highly respectable. And that's, all things that, myself and Henry and the whole defensive line front can do.
Is it a technique thing or a mental thing?
Both. It's both. Getting off of blocks and hustling, that's all mental right there. So technique is, the first, couple steps when a center snapped the ball. That's all technique right there. But after that, it's pure heart, will, determination.
They want to see that relentless pursuit that they displayed against Vick and company last season. I should point out a couple of little nuggets here. Gabe Karimi, remember we talked about how his knee would respond following his first full practice in pads since that game against New Orleans. Didn't respond well, did not practice today. Lovie Smith saying he should be okay, quote, eventually. Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator.
Are they thinking about IRing him?
No, not at all. He'll be back. They just don't want to rush it, and this is part of the process.
Cautious.
Yeah, this is part of the process. They said they ran him through some stuff yesterday, I think, in order to see how his knee would respond, and I think they kind of expected what happened today. Meantime, Dave Tobe says Deshaun Jackson is the most explosive return man that the Bears are going to face. They will not kick to him if given an opportunity to do either. They will not kick to him. They also spent time showing the Bears special teams unit that video of Deshaun Jackson's game-winning return against the Giants last year, just to remind everybody how explosive and unpredictable he can be. So that's something to pay attention to.
Thank you, Zach.
You got it.
Thanks, Zach.
We will be talking more football with Brian Billick in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Always solid football content when Brian Billick joins us on The Score.